Our final segment this week is our deep dive.
Okay.
I think we've been known for our deep dives here on Only Comics. We've done them since almost day one. I think our first deep dive was into Guardians 3, maybe. And then we did our deep dive into The Flash, which still haunts us week in and week out here. But we are doing a deep dive into a movie that I absolutely love. And actually, I'm not 100% sure where you are in the movie as a whole. I know you're not a huge fan of the main actor's casting, Robert Pattinson. And I think it's good to do this, Agent, because we agree on a lot here. We disagree on some. You know, we did our Batman rankings not too long ago, so check that video out if you've not seen that yet. Our live action Batman and Bruce Wayne actors, and this is where we a little bit of a disagreement here.
Yep.
Your favorite Batman is Christian Bale, right?
Yep.
Mine is Robert Pattinson.
Okay.
And one of my favorite Batman movies, or maybe it is my favorite Batman movie now, is The Batman.
Okay.
Would you say yours is Dark Knight?
Yeah.
All time.
Yep.
Okay. And by the way, someone pointed this out on TikTok or asked a question since I said that Iron Man 3 is a Christmas movie. They said, well, does that make Batman Returns a Christmas movie? And like, absolutely. Batman Returns is an iconic Christmas movie. I watch that every year around Christmas too.
Wow.
I mean, the chick dies on a Christmas tree. You can't get more Christmas than that.
I guess.
I mean, there's Christmas lights everywhere. So anyway, The Batman is not a Christmas movie. This, I'd almost say it's like a Halloween movie, right? It takes place on Halloween.
Yep.
The beginning of the movie. Before we get into this, if we were to score this movie, Adrian, say it was brand new and we're going to give it a score, I would give this movie I think, what's the highest I've ever given something on here? Maybe an 8.5, Guardians 3, possibly. Yeah. I put this above that. This is going to be a 9.2 for me.
Wow.
Yep. It's that damn good. What's your score?
I would do 6.5 or 7.
Okay.
Again, I'm kind of like mentally blocked on Pattinson. Even though after seeing it for the second time, I was a little bit more impressed.
Okay.
So it's not like a Flash level thing.
Oh no.
But I guess for me, it's more about the nuances of the Batman after, for me, over 40 years. You know.
Yeah.
I understand that Batman had to start somewhere, but first of all, Pattinson doesn't physically fit, the Bruce Wayne bill for me. Not the Bruce Wayne or the Batman. But he was able to, successfully, manage the brooding.
Yep.
Which, Batman does.
Yeah.
He hasn't gotten to that playboyish Bruce Wayne yet.
Yeah.
He's still an angry teenager.
Right. It's year 2.
Right. In this movie. I'm concerned about that diary he's keeping, though. Dude.
Yeah.
That's going to fall into somebody's hands.
Yeah, right.
So I guess I'm mentally blocked from Pattinson, Edward and Batman, Bruce Wayne, and that's probably my biggest hang up. The storyline was cool.
Yeah.
I like, that it was dark, but not like, Justice League dark.
It was not shot in James Gunn's garage.
It was not shot in James Gunn's garage. Nope. Correct. I liked what's her face?
Zoe.
Yep.
Zoe Kravitz.
I'm actually impressed with her as she, continues her acting career. So kudos for her. I actually like the Penguin in this one. He was pretty cool.
Colin Farrell's Penguin was great.
Yep. That was Colin Farrell?
Yes. Yeah, exactly.
Wow.
Yep.
I didn't read, who the actor's thing. I wasn't interested. But if that was Colin Farrell, that was a very, very good portrayal.
Yes.
Of him.
I was getting like Tony Soprano vibes at times.
Exactly.
Right? Like
that was
in a good
cool.
way.
Yep. That was cool. The scenes, the cop things, all of that was cool, but it wasn't. It just didn't have that impact for me.
Yeah. What was missing from this movie for you?
Just Pattinson wasn't doing it for me.
Okay.
I mean, and that's me.
Yeah.
But
and are you purely talking the look, or are you talking the way he portrayed the character? What was it more just the look for you was off?
I think it was the look.
The look, okay.
He looked, and the other thing is that he looked more like somebody that could be recognizable if somebody just did this than any other Batman. Well, not any other Batman. Clooney was recognizable.
Yeah.
And that's another reason why I like Christian Bale, because Christian Bale, when he put on the costume and when he was Bruce Wayne, his face almost looked completely different.
Okay.
Pattinson, Affleck, all these other guys, they were just like, oh, you got some shades on? Oh, Batman kind of thing.
Yeah.
So most of my deal with the movie was about Pattinson.
Okay.
And I'll probably grow into it, if assuming they let him make another movie, right?
Well, the confirmed trilogy.
Yeah.
Yep.
So I'll grow into him, but for right now, 6.57.
Okay, 6.57. I said 9.2-ish. And I hear that. I mean, I think that is. It doesn't bother me as much as you. The Pattinson, the lack of the physical size. Like 'cause I am more partial to the big Hulk. I mean, we did the Hush deep dive last week.
Right.
And my favorite Batman artist is Jim Lee.
Right.
The way he and he's only drawn Batman for a couple different comic runs. He did the Hush run. He did the Batman and Robin Superstar or All-Star one, which was atrocious.
Right.
The story was Frank Miller was off the fucking rails with this oh my God. This is the one where Batman, and he like slaps Robin and says, "I'm the goddamn Batman." Like it's nuts.
Right.
You know when Michael Keaton goes, "You want to get nuts?"
Yeah.
They got fucking nuts in this comic.
Right.
So,
right.
And then there's a new run. I don't know if you've read this run, but the Justice League, when they did the New 52, and after Flashpoint in the comics, when they relaunched the whole comic universe, they did a new origin for the Justice League, and Jim Lee drew that, and I think Jeff Johns wrote it, maybe. But that was it wasn't as good. In my opinion, the art wasn't as good as the Hush artwork.
Okay.
But it was really good to see him, and I mean putting Jim Lee's take on Superman, Wonder Woman, the whole crew. So that's a good run there. But my point is, I like the bigger Batman in the comics. Now in Pattinson or Matt Reeves' defense, who casted him, every Batman story in the comics doesn't have a big hulking Batman.
Right.
There are times where he is similar to this, but I like the bigger Batman, and I'm assuming you do too.
Yeah, I do too. And my hang up isn't Pattinson's size. It's just that he didn't carry it.
Got it.
You know what I'm saying? It's different because like even in Hush, Batman is a slimmer Batman in Hush.
Yeah.
Which and you don't like the blue and gray suit.
Right.
Which I actually do.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't like all this, this armored stealth fighter crap. I mean, it's cool.
Yeah.
But I mean, by the time they got to what's his who's the last one? I can't think of his name.
Who?
Affleck. By the time they got to Affleck, man, he looked literally like a stealth fighter.
Yeah.
I mean, they just get overkill on this stuff. So.
Oh, in the Justice League.
Yeah, the Justice League.
That was too much.
Yeah,
that was definitely too much.
So it wasn't Pattinson's size. I'm okay with a slimmer Batman, especially because it's year 2. But he just didn't. For me, he didn't carry the Batman or the Bruce Wayne persona.
Okay. Now the story you talked about the whole. Well, actually, let's go through some casting choices real quick. Paul Dano, Riddler. Riddler, we've joked about as being like a 5th-tier character.
Right.
I thought, speaking of Hush, I feel like this take on Riddler was very inspired by Hush. The wrapped face. Now it's different. It was green because he's Riddler. And then the way the murders and stuff like that. I think you can definitely see some influence there.
Well, when I first saw it, I was so distracted by Pattinson, I didn't even realize there was Riddler. That's first and foremost. But I don't know, just some maniac. But definitely inspired by Hush. Very good portrayal.
Yeah.
And I always thought Riddler was like a thief, not a murderer. I've never seen him as that. So that was a take.
There has been some comic runs where, like, I'm thinking that there's the War of Jokes and Riddles, where I want to say Tom King writes that, and you see a little more of this murderous. So it has, even though we see the Hush, especially because we just read the book recently, but there are some versions of the Riddler in the comics that you could see was kind of drawn from as well.
Right. So that's another reason why I didn't really think about him as the Riddler, because he wasn't stealing anything other than snatching lives. Right. He was not Jim Carrey. Oh my God, I forgot about
Remember that Riddler? Which I don't hate. It's a little like it kind of gets too far off the rails at times, but
it's like a George Clooney kind of Batman era kind of a deal.
Yep. I don't absolutely hate that one. Like that was the whole during the Uma Thurman Poison Ivy,
right?
Which wasn't bad. It was the Bane in that movie was atrocious. But so all right, Paul Dano or Jim Carrey Riddler. What do you say?
Oh my God, Paul Dano.
Paul Dano all day.
Yep.
So you mentioned Zoe Kravitz.
Yep.
Great portrayal of Catwoman.
Yeah.
Now I love Michelle Pfeiffer's Catwoman for what it is.
Right.
Like I think that's amazing, but that's not Catwoman from the comics.
Correct.
Catwoman from the comics isn't supernatural. Doesn't have powers. She's a thief.
Yeah, she's a cat burglar.
Yeah, exactly. Who just happens to be very great trained in martial arts and competitive gymnastic level abilities.
Right.
So, but Zoe, if you've read Year One and Long Halloween and all it's a very true to comic portrayal of Catwoman. It reminds me of that Catwoman.
Speaking of Catwoman, right? So, your girl, who played Storm, Halle Berry, right?
Yeah,
her version of Catwoman.
Oh my God,
it's like they should just like not cast her as a superhero because she's played a superhero and a villain, and they both have been pretty
atrocious.
Bad.
That's a good point. Put her on the do not cast list.
Exactly.
Jeffrey Wright as James Gordon. How'd you feel about this? I'm a little mixed on. I love Jeffrey Wright. At times, his acting in this movie though felt a little forced.
Right.
Like the too deep growling voice, and it was a mixed bag for me on his portrayal.
It was a mixed bag for me because there's certain characters you just don't switch their identities. To be honest, there's only been one successful race changeover for a superhero, and that's been the Aquaman character.
Okay.
But a black Johnny Storm, a black Jim Gordon, it just doesn't work.
Okay.
For me, maybe that whole 40 years of comic book brainwashing.
Yeah.
But just leave it the way it is. It works.
Yeah.
And
you'd want to see the orange hair. Gordon with the hair down here, the big old mustache.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But not only that. So then, how do you explain his daughter? What is his daughter going to look like?
Yeah.
So there's a whole story behind Jim Gordon. Number one, number two. I think Jim Gordon is underrated. We discussed this last week.
Yep.
I think Jim Gordon is as much responsible for Batman as Bruce Wayne and Alfred.
Yeah.
And the parents dying. He is that critical.
Absolutely.
And he's the only one I think would have been able to talk the Joker, Batman down from killing the Joker.
Yeah.
So just having him, and again, I like him as an actor.
Third
World was cool.
Yep.
But Jim Gordon, no, because there's so much else, other stuff. Barbara. There's so much other stuff behind Jim Gordon than just him as the police chief, then police commissioner.
Right. And I think the race thing doesn't bother me as much if the portrayal is still really good. And I feel with this one, it was good at times, and then times it felt forced so I feel like he could have pulled it off maybe, but that was definitely not my favorite casting choice in this, and I think more the portrayal. One of my biggest critiques of Christian Bale's Batman is the voice shit. What is he saying, bro? Put the subtitles on. I never knew I needed subtitles for a Batman movie.
Right.
But I don't like when Jeffrey Wright does that here. It doesn't feel like Gordon.
Right. Well, it's not just that. It's not just the race thing. But like I said, there's things that trickle out of the Jim Gordon character that I'm concerned how they're gonna portray it later on.
Yeah.
Like Bruce Wayne and Barbara Gordon had a different relationship outside of the costume.
Yeah.
How does Jim Gordon, what does Barbara look like now?
Yeah.
And what's Barbara's relationship with Bruce Wayne, and what's Batgirl's relationship with Batman?
Right.
So this goes deeper than just that.
So next, John Turturro as Falcone, I thought was phenomenal.
Yeah, I agree with that.
I thought that was great. And then we had Andy Serkis as Alfred. He's not my favorite Alfred.
No,
he's not.
He's a military. In Black Panther, he was a mercenary.
Yeah,
and
he plays Ulysses Claw.
Right. He's not. Alfred isn't a mercenary, because this Alfred, he was bulky.
Yep.
He wasn't that elegant Englishman.
No.
Which is what we're used to. That's another change. He wasn't that elegant Englishman. He was this bulldog brute looking guy. Always running around. He's supposed to take care of Bruce, but
yeah.
I agree. I don't agree with that portrayal.
Yep. No, was not a big fan. And then we both said Colin Farrell Penguin freaking knocked it out of the park.
Right.
Great job. And some of these side casts, I like the guy with the, speak of the voices, the one who's like, "You really gonna let him in here, Jim?"
Right.
Like I read, it's just, it's so like noir cop voice. This guy really gonna do I forget his name. And then, even a lot of the sideline characters, I like, what's his name? Peter Sarsgaard plays the Don Mitchell, or not Don Mitchell. He plays the DA. The one with the collar around his neck. I thought he did a good job. Even the one who played Don Mitchell, the mayor, who was only in the movie for a few minutes. But yeah, I think overall pretty good casting. But yeah, I agree with those couple. Now the story. So you talked about the detective story, right? And we just read Hush, which was a detective story.
Right.
I love those Batman stories over a lot of the big events and actions. Like The Long Halloween, we're going to do that episode in a couple weeks, is probably one top 3 Batman comics of mine, and it was that early Batman story, detective story. Batman's not the best detective yet, which we saw in this, which I like, because they rush things in movies, right? Like we talked about it where they go from the origin. Batman's parents are dead, and 4 minutes later he knows how to fly and glide around Gotham. Slow down, dude.
I would like to see year one. I would like to see a prequel to what. I mean, I understand his parents were killed, and I mean, we all have gone through some kind of tragedy.
Yeah.
Well, maybe not all of us, but we have life pivoting moments, right? And I would like to see what actually changed him into, like, I'm going to pursue this thing.
This version of Batman, you're saying?
Any version of Batman. I don't think I've ever seen a show, a comic, or whatever on what led him actually up to now. I've decided to take these steps to be this person. We've seen, like in the Christian Bale one, he went around, he got all this training, Ra's al Ghul, with these prisons and blah, 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 blah. But that's after he decided to do
right. So you're saying that moment where he makes that decision of, like,
correct,
I'm going to do something about
correct.
this.
And then specifically, I'm going to do these things, and I'm going to do this looking like that, and so on and so forth. And I understand, like in the Christian Bale one, Ra's al Ghul said that, you need to be feared. Basically said, you don't need to just, have these abilities, because anybody can do that, but you need to have something else about you that makes people, afraid of you or fear you.
Right.
So I would be interested in that kind of a story.
Yeah. And this one picks up, like we said, year 2,
yep.
Which you mentioned the diary, which, hopefully no one finds it. But I really love how they started this movie. Started the introduction of Batman in the movie with Batman's narration.
Right.
We talked about that with some of the best comics, I think, have his narration bubbles throughout. And Jeff Loeb is one who always includes a narration. So I love starting the intro to Batman there. And it feels very raw. It feels very gritty. It feels like Gotham.
One of the things that I like the most, I'm a tech guy, not by profession, but I try. That's why I like Iron Man.
Yeah, yep.
I like the tech. So it's good to see, because most of the time you see Batman with refined technology.
Yes.
He's got the Batwing, got the Batbolt, the Bat Sub, blah, 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 blah. It's cool to see him starting out even with simple tech, even though the eye, the contact lenses thing, that's not simple stuff.
No.
But still, it's kind of in its infancy. He's got a car that he looks like he welded together himself in a garage. So I like that kind of stuff.
Yeah. It's not all polished and shiny.
Right.
It's very functional. To your point, the contact lens, I thought that was really cool.
Yep.
But that doesn't mean that everything in this thing is going to be all polished, shiny. It's year 2. He's just getting going. Even he's still, to your point earlier, he's not Bruce Wayne yet.
Right.
Like we talking about the mask, Bruce Wayne being the mask.
Right.
He is more Batman than anything right now.
Right. And that's his only focus. He doesn't care about the company. He doesn't care about the money. He just wants to do this thing in the background. And it's cool that in year 2, he already has a reputation in the town.
Yeah.
When people see that light, they start questioning whether he's in this shadow, in that shadow, on this rooftop. So that was pretty cool. So that means he's had a tremendous impression.
Yeah.
Even though Gotham, according to his own words, was still in the shit.
Right.
So a lot of stuff still going wrong, which is also why I think, Jim Gordon is important in this, because he allowed him to operate in this city, even in the precinct.
Yeah.
So that was pretty powerful.
That was a cool scene. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and when you're saying that, when that light hits the sky, like I love the writing in this movie.
Yeah.
And Matt Reeves directed and co-wrote this, and then Peter Craig is a guy who he co-wrote this film as well. He co-wrote The Town. You ever seen that one?
Yep.
Yeah. So I mean, very good, and that's what's cool. You talk about your boy Jimmy earlier shitting on Marvel or comic book movies in general. But I like when they take these established directors and writers and bring them into this world, because with this movie doesn't feel like any other comic movie.
Right.
As much as we're praising MCU and I love them, but a lot of their movies sometimes feel like it's just a template. We're going to take this Iron Man template and we're going to swap out the characters and make Captain Marvel. And then we're going to do the same thing and make Shang-Chi. To an extent, right?
Right.
This did not feel like any other comic movie I've seen before in my life.
It almost feels like a not a superhero movie, but like a cop that has, you see those movies where cops have been wronged or whatever, and they turn it like the what's my boy? Not the Executioner. With the skull on his face.
The what? Punisher.
Punisher.
Yep.
Almost like that.
Yeah.
It's like Batman is like the Punisher,
but
richer kind of a deal.
Absolutely.
But you were saying something earlier about collaboration. I think, and maybe this is a first. I'm sure I'm not the first one to say this, but you know how rappers collaborate on songs?
Yep.
Why don't Jimmy, instead of shitting on people, collaborate with other directors?
There you go.
And then they do like a one-off thing. Maybe it'll be good. Maybe it won't be. Yep. But I think, these directors that are doing these powerful movies get with other directors that do powerful movies, or fledgling directors, bring along a junior every once in a while, throw them in the mix, and just do like some nice collaboration, and then you guys go off and do your own thing again. But I think that'll be a pretty powerful thing if some directors. I mean, obviously, it's not going to be however long it takes to put out an album, but I'm sure creating a movie is years versus whatever length of time it does to create make an album. But I think collaboration is probably the way to go, because it just seems like these guys
like the Avengers of directors is what you're saying.
Exactly.
Bring them together.
Exactly.
Yeah. Instead of shitting on them, help them out.
Yep.
God. Some other, I'm trying to think of downs, because most of it I'm going to give this movie as praise, but
I take care of the downs.
Yeah, you take care of them. But the other thing that I'm not, and this is not, it's probably unfair to put this critique on this movie in general, but I feel like since the Michael Keaton era of Batman, since the Tim Burton movies, we've not seen a really great Batcave on screen. You had Batman Begins had the Batcave, and then the Manor got destroyed, and then in Dark Knight it was like some underground garage.
Right.
Remember that? And then, Batman vs Superman, we see a little bit of it, but that movie's like, we don't even talk. Let's talk about that movie, the better. And in this movie, he doesn't even live in Wayne Manor anymore. He's in the clock tower.
Right.
The Wayne Tower or whatnot. and the Bat Cave is essentially, an old underground railroad type of subway station abandoned, which it looked more like the Bat Cave than the Dark Knight version. But I want to see the
Bat computer,
the tradition, the Bat computer, like the old school Bat Cave. I want to see the big dinosaur. I want to see the big penny. Like I want to, and maybe year 2 we're not going to see it yet. But that is one thing I did not like about this movie was no Wayne Manor, no Bat Cave.
Well, like you said, I mean, he's a junior in this.
Yeah.
So he's developing. He hasn't found all this stuff, or he hasn't developed or felt the need for it.
Right.
His sole thing, he doesn't even want to be Bruce Wayne at this point.
Right,
so he's definitely not going to be concentrating on, feng shui, bat cave kind of a deal. So I'm okay with seeing that because that gives him an opportunity. It gives us both, and by us I mean the film and me, accepting Pattinson, an opportunity to grow.
Yeah.
He's going to grow into all his nuances. He's going to figure out the Batman, Bruce Wayne combination thing, and I'm going to get to see Pattinson grow into this figure, hopefully. And I hope he has a good run. I hope he has like a Wolverine level run with this character. In other words, remember when Jackman came out, he was,
tiny.
He was tiny, running around like a maniac or whatever.
True.
But now he's more developed. And he's not quite like a maniac, but more savage, which to me is like a step up.
Yep.
But so hopefully Pattinson will grow into this thing, and I'm actually kind of looking forward to it.
Yeah. All right. Man, you're coming around the other side of this by the end of this deep dive, Adrian.
No, it's not that. It's just that you get you get some time to digest some things.
Yeah.
It's not as bad. That's why people talk it out. That's why we talk things out.
Absolutely.
Things aren't
maybe
as
Jimmy
bad.
can come here and we can talk it out with Jimmy.
I need a moment on Jimmy.
You need a moment. Okay. Yeah, next time.
Let me get my little rage out for this week, and then maybe next week.
I gotcha. A lot of the other, we're talking about Batcave, talking about different settings. I do think I would say this is my favorite Gotham I've ever seen on screen.
Okay.
I love the raininess, the darkiness, the darkness, and the way they shot it. They use that new technology where it's not green screen. Mm-hmm. It's basically a massive LED, almost dome. That they build a live set in front of, and they project whatever background they want on it started with The Mandalorian,
right?
First time they used it. And they use Unreal Engine, which is a game engine,
right? And
they can put real photorealistic assets on that. Mm-hmm. And because it's LED, how bright the lights are, you're getting the LED light shine. That's why in those scenes when they're on the rooftop, it really looks like the sun is freaking shining on Batman and shit like that because of this mask. So I think that helped them out a bunch.
Nice.
And just the overall look of the city. And I know they did some CGI where they took shots of like London and merged them with other cities. So they created Gotham instead of just filming it in Pittsburgh and telling us it's Gotham.
Right.
Dark Knight, no offense.
I also like the simple stuff too. Like when Catwoman, when Batman first followed her to her hotel and she got changed. Yeah. And she came out of the room and just kind of flipped down silently. Yep. So those little nuanced moments, I actually like that. So it's not all about, even though I'm a tech guy, also like those little. So this show did have nuance. It had comedy relief. It had comedy relief. Not like the Thor Love and Thunder shit.
There's no goats.
But I like the comic relief like Penguin kept calling him, or somebody was like vengeance. Vengeance. He showed up vengeance. Like that kind of comic relief. And it had, also the storyline. The detective part, which is what Batman is. He's a detective. Right. So they did make this into a detective movie, which I liked. Yeah.
And, talking about the comic relief, it wasn't even like, a lot of it weren't even comedic moments.
That's what I'm saying.
Like, Batman was funny, but not. Right. Like, when he's in front of the Iceberg Lounge, and the one twin answers the door, and he brings the other guy, and he goes, if you don't get out of here, you're going to get blood on that suit. He goes, who, mine or yours?
Yeah, right.
Like, it's funny. Right. Or when he's talking about the precinct, and then the guy's like, I got you on assaulting an officer, and he hits another one. He goes, now you got me on 3. Right. Like, it's just, that type of stuff was funny.
Right. To me, that's comic relief. Yep. Not this overt, ha, 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 I made a joke, why aren't you laughing kind of a thing. Right. Nah, that's garbage.
Absolutely. But yeah, Gotham, I love the Iceberg Lounge. That was cool. I think it was the, best Iceberg Lounge portrayal. I don't think we've ever seen Iceberg Lounge in another movie. Nah. Now you talking about Danny DeVito's Penguin, which was again, for what it was, I thought was great.
Right.
But that's not the Penguin from the comics.
Right.
So location's great. Gotham PD I thought was cool. You know, the priest looked like it would be in Gotham. And I like that it was small. And what I mean by, like, there was a few locations and everything happened in those few locations.
Right.
And if you even, I didn't pick up on this until like probably the fourth or fifth time I've seen the movie, but the diner where Riddler was at was right across the street from the Iceberg Lounge. Like, you see it early in the movie. And there's even the apartment that he was at, which was right at, like, kind of across from there, was all in the same shot from the beginning of the movie. And Falcone's hideout, or whatever, his office, whatever you want to call it, was above the Iceberg Lounge.
See, that's all those little nuggets that make the movie interesting in hindsight.
Yep.
You know, because obviously you're not necessarily noticing them.
Oh, you ain't gonna see it
the first time you know you're looking at it, but it's definitely you know those little, again, nuances.
Yeah, you mentioned nuance. This is probably one of the most nuanced comic movies I've ever seen. Like, all these little things, these subtle callbacks, Easter eggs, whatever you want to call them. But anyway, so we talked about the detective story. I guess the murder mystery piece to this, right? Now, we knew it was Riddler, but Batman didn't know it was Riddler yet.
Right.
Or didn't know who Riddler was. And Riddler was pretty violent, man.
Oh, yeah.
They did a great job of making the violence look very, I guess, almost grotesque, but still keeping it PG-13, because it wasn't rated R.
Right.
Little things like when he's in the car and he's beating him, you know, with that carpet tool, the camera's blurred.
Right.
I thought that was pretty cool.
Right. Or when he put the cage on the other person's face with the rat in it.
Yeah.
You didn't see, you know, the carnage,
right.
you know, at the time, which would have been, you know, graphic.
Yeah.
But so you're right. I mean, they kind of portrayed it, but not really.
Yeah. Even like little subtle things like the 44 Below Club, which essentially is pretty much like a whorehouse. Right. Right. But you didn't see any acts, but they did it.
It was understood.
It was. Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
Which I thought was really cool. And I like that, you know, they did a good job of juggling all the characters. Like, the Penguin was not the main villain. Riddler was. Penguin was more of a sideline character. So was Falcone. Maroni was mentioned, but he was already in jail. You know, these are all characters from, like, the Long Halloween and stuff like that. You could tell it was heavily influenced there. And I mentioned a little bit earlier, I like the fact that Batman is not the best detective yet.
Right.
Penguin, even, you talking about funny things, this is more like, if you're, you know, a comic fan, you pick up on little Easter eggs. But when Penguin's like, oh, the world's greatest detectives over here, like, which is what Batman's known as. Right. Even that, like, when Gordon's like, look at this or whatever, like, it was just Jeffrey, take it down a few notches, Jeffrey. So
one of the things I'm sitting here thinking about. Yeah. There weren't any moments where I wanted that didn't make sense. And like in Blue Beetle, right? Yeah. When they in the cave or whatever.
Yeah.
And the girl CEO, whatever, she runs and she pushes the other girl out the way. That didn't make sense to me, because now you're just lengthening the movie.
Right.
So instead of pushing the girl and you both get on the other side of the falling ceiling, you push the girl and then you step back. You don't die underneath all the rubble, but now you're stuck in this thing.
Right.
So that's a moment that didn't make sense to me.
Yeah.
There was also no moments in this Batman where I was like, can we just move this along? You know what I'm saying?
And it's a long-ass movie.
Right. So I wasn't like, oh, my God, can we please? I wasn't watching my watch. I'm like, can we please just move this along? Like in what was it? The Matrix.
Yeah.
At the end, I think it was like 3. And the girl was dying or whatever. And I literally said in the movie theater, can you please just fucking die? Because they just kept talking through it and talking through it and talking through it. And I didn't see any of that in this movie. And one more thing.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. And this movie is damn near 3 hours long.
Right.
And it does not feel like it.
Yep.
You know, I remember watching it the first time. I remember it felt like a constant moving ride. Like, it just did not stop. And every to your point, every scene mattered.
Right.
Every interaction made an impact on the overall. Nothing was wasted, and I like the I said I like the fact that Batman was not the perfect detective yet, but I also like that because he's in this year 2 phase, and you see this character arc. A lot of times with these superhero movies, comic movies, you don't see much of a character arc, right? Like the character's the same character at the end of the film as he was in the beginning. A lot of times,
Right.
Some of these good ones, like this Batman, he starts off as a true vigilante. Right. I mean, he's beating the shit out of people because he enjoys it.
Right.
Right. Like the subway. I mean, he's literally preying on criminals. Like, now I get it. They're down there, they're about to attack this dude because they're film. It's Halloween, so it's cute to knock people out and film it. Apparently, right.
Unfortunately, that's still happening
exactly.
today. That's ridiculous. But
not even just this movie had some not over the top in your face, but it had some social commentary in it.
Right.
Like, yes, that is something that still happens, and some of the racial stuff, some of the income disparity type of classism, if you will. Catwoman kind of alludes to that.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, it starts off when you first introduce to the Batman, which I think is an epic scene.
Right.
Where they're in the subway and you hear him coming and everybody stops and my man just unleashes.
Right.
And then the whole I'm vengeance.
Right.
I like his bat voice. It's not. I mean, I know you like Christian. Are you upset because you can actually understand this one, or
no? I mean, I wasn't thinking about the voice, but because that doesn't roll into whether I like something or not. But I mean, I can agree. I can agree. He was definitely more understandable.
Yeah. But it sounded different enough.
But it was also his voice, the voice of a year 2 Batman.
Yes.
Too. So Christian is old, 8 pack of cigarettes a day smoking Batman.
He wore out those vocal cords and all that that stuff. But I did like, and I like when it's a subtle, like it doesn't need to sound like a whole nother person, but it's different enough. So I did like that, but I like the inexperience of Batman. Sure. One thing I did not like the look of was that squirrel suit, when he's about to jump off the building.
Yeah, oh yeah.
I think that was a little much. I know they're trying to make it practical, but I'd have been okay if there was just something in his cape that,
Right.
But I like that he crashed.
Yeah.
And even the look, you could tell what was cool about this movie was there were a lot of things that we seen this Batman do that Batman's done a million times in the comics or other movies, but we were seeing him do them for the first time here.
Right.
Like, when he shot up with the grappling hook, that was a cool little visual up the Gotham City PD. And then when he gets up there, the look of like fear on his face right before he jumped.
Right.
We've never seen that in a movie because we always see the established Batman.
Right. He hesitated.
Yeah.
The established.
He's never done it before.
He would have just not even thought about it. Just gone. Yeah. And he wouldn't have had a squirrel suit.
No.
He would have had a grappling hook, went to another building, something like that. Yep. Or he would have had like more traditional wings as opposed to, whatever that thing was that he had. Or just, let his cape drift him down like a parachute.
Exactly.
Some variation of that, but hey, they had to adapt. Yeah. I'm not hating on him for it.
No. But I did. I thought that, to your point, nuance, where he's never done this before. But he does it, and he doesn't have complete control. He crashes and burns. Right. You mentioned the Batmobile. I know you're a fan of the Tumbler.
Yep. Oh, yeah.
I was always a big fan of the Tumbler. Look-wise, my favorite Batman or favorite Batmobile on screen was the Michael Keaton Batmobile. That was my favorite. The look of it. That's always been my favorite. It kind of it's right up there with the Batman animated series Batmobile, right? Right. But I enjoyed the Tumbler. I thought Tumbler was great. I didn't really like the Ben Affleck tank. I'm not a big fan of when the Batmobile is a freaking tank. That's not my thing. But this Batmobile I loved. To your point, it does look like something. And actually, in the beginning of the movie, we see when they first go into this Batcave, we see pieces of the car everywhere. Right. He's literally putting it together, himself. And there's a cool little, I guess it would be, it's not a comic. It's a little novel that was put together about this Batman character before he becomes Batman. It's written. It's part of this storyline. Okay. It's on. I think I had to buy it as a regular book, But in this story, this Batman is big into street racing. And that's partly why his Batmobile is a muscle car.
Got it.
Yeah, so that you get to see some continuity there.
Okay, that makes
There's
sense.
even, I've not read these yet, but Paul Dano, the actor, wrote some Riddler comics that tell the backstory of his character. And I've heard they're pretty good. I've not checked those out either. So there's a lot of other additional content, building off this movie. But I loved this Batmobile, and I loved the introduction to it. I think that scene was one of the highlights of this movie.
Yeah.
How'd you feel about the Batmobile?
Oh, I loved it too.
Yeah.
Again, it looked like Rodhead had went in his garage.
Yeah.
And, he had some tools, had some metal,
Yep.
had an engine. Just happened to have a jet too, but
Yep.
whatever. So it looked like, I always like movies where, and that's the thing that's why Spider-Man is so popular. Because people feel like they could be Peter Parker.
Yes. Yep.
This Batmobile feels like I could have, went out and built this thing myself.
You can see yourself driving it almost.
Oh, definitely. I can definitely see myself driving that.
Hell yeah.
But, it looks real.
Yeah.
It doesn't look like the Michael Keaton Batmobile. It's cool and all, but it looks like it had to be manufactured somewhere.
Yes. Yeah.
This Batmobile looks like he built it himself, which is what he did.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, definitely. That is one thing in some of these movies where, like, we even see it. Like, I love the Iron Man, Tony stuff, and the Spider-Man, but you're like, this guy built all these things himself.
Right.
In like the 3 months that were between these films. Really, he built this arc reactor, all this stuff, and I get it's and nowadays it's even crazier in these movies.
Right.
But you're right, I do like that it just feels very hands-on, DIY. Right, he's just down there plugging away with his eye makeup on, and that was a highlight. I like a lot of the tech and gadgets in this movie because they're very practical.
Right.
To your point, everything makes sense. Even the grappling hooks that he has right on his arm.
That was cool.
It was like everything was engineered to work as if it was real versus like this fantasy world. So I like the groundedness of this.
I like the fact that there was no batarangs.
Yeah.
Because those things require skill.
Right.
Which he obviously hadn't developed at that point.
Yeah.
So the spikes on his wrist and stuff that he could like shoot out or something like that actually made sense.
Yeah.
So I would have been disappointed. I'm like, you know how much skill it takes to throw those batarangs the way, Batman does?
Yeah, you can't do that day one.
Exactly. No day one on that.
Nope. Again, everything's pretty practical. And I like his level of, like, don't give a fuck for most of the movie.
Right.
Like, he goes right up and this is another thing where it's kind of funny, but not when they realize that it's tied back to Penguin, him and Gordon. And Gordon's like, you'll never get in there without a warrant. And he's just like, yeah. Like, doesn't say anything like, okay, dude, I'm just going to go in there.
Right.
And then he has no problem jacking up Penguin. Like, and even when he goes, do you know my reputation? And he's like, yeah, do you?
Right.
Like, yeah, I know the real reputation, dude. Do you?
That's right.
Like, Batman just gives no fucks in the beginning of this movie.
Didn't he bust in there as Bruce Wayne?
He did at one point too.
Yep.
When the news came out about his father and Falcone being connected to it. Yeah. Then he rolled up in there as Bruce Wayne, and they just let him in. And what was funny is the twins now, like, their noses are all jacked up.
Right.
I love that too. Like, sometimes in movies, guys in a fight, he's in like a scene, 3 minutes later, his face is fine.
Right.
Even the cop that he broke his nose, we saw that later in the movie.
Right.
Continuity. Yep.
Continuity, baby.
Man, it's like they were listening to you.
Right.
Even though this movie came out before we did the podcast.
Exactly, right.
And then there's this cool little subplot of there being an informant in the Salvatore Maroni's case. And we get to see, like, in a lot of the I guess, good comic book, or even in year one, what you talked about, GCPD they were corrupt in the year one comic. And we get to see a lot of that here. Like, there's a few good cops, but a lot of these guys were tied into this renewal fund.
Right.
And I just like how practical, like, these are things, to your point, that really go on. Now, it all's happening in Gotham, but these are things that, government, do they not take advantage of funds and give them to people that probably shouldn't have? Or organized crime not tied in with governments at time? Probably, like, so you get to see a lot of, again, social commentary and I'm probably jumping ahead a little bit, but I like the progression from this vengeance-like character to now realizing he has to become the hero at the end.
Right.
You know, I mean, and we don't do a scene by scene because I mean, there's a lot of good. This movie's 3 hours long. We'd do a freaking 10-hour deep dive if we did that. Right. But I like how towards the end he realizes it's bigger than just me trying to get revenge.
Right.
And we get to see him starting to turn into this Batman hero. Because in the beginning, I wouldn't call him a hero at all.
He was just a brute out, beating people up and stuff in the street.
He was out for justice in his mind, vengeance, and it comes and I love that they changed a handful of things, but the core things that make Batman Batman they kept intact. Right. Batman is Batman because his parents were killed. Yes, we didn't see exactly how, and even when they talk about it, it seems to be a little bit different. Like his father was running for mayor at the time, and they were killed during this campaign.
Right.
They didn't say anything about a theater leaving, all that stuff. So who knows? Maybe a little different. But the key parts to why he's became Batman are still intact. He is there to prevent what happened to his family from happening to other people.
A twist I found interesting was that they made his mother out to be psycho.
Yeah,
that was pretty interesting. Yep. And that some of the key decisions that Bruce Wayne's father made was to keep his wife's condition out of the public's awareness. So that was an interesting twist.
Absolutely. And in her family, and this I've read this in some comics where her family's tied to the Arkhams.
Yep.
Because, if you go back to Gotham history, Arkham's one of the early families, so were the Waynes. So I thought that was a cool little inclusion. Again, to your point, everything makes sense.
Right. And speaking of storyline, I like the Falcone Selena Kyle connection. Because it's definitely one of those things where when you see it in the beginning, you think just like Bruce Wayne was thinking. They're a couple or something, or there's at least something physical going on between them, and it was. I mean, her father or whatever. So I like that dynamic too. So that was pretty interesting.
I can't wait for you to read Long Halloween. It pulls from that a little bit.
Okay.
And this is, we've talked about this here where movies pull from comics, but they don't need to be a scene by scene creation every single time. Right?
Exactly.
This is very inspired by Year One. It's inspired by the Long Halloween. There's an Ego comic, which this is inspired by, and a handful of others, but it's not a copycat.
Right. And that comment, who made that comment? If you wanted to be like the comic, go read the comic.
Oh, yeah.
Well, I didn't have to go read the comic. This was a good enough storyline.
Exactly.
It had a lot of little good elements in it.
Yep.
And it was true enough to the characters.
Yes.
That I didn't have to go read the comic.
Right.
It was entertaining. It was a good show.
Yep. I also like the little subplot between Bruce and Alfred, where in the beginning, Bruce is not he's not looking at Alfred as that father. He's almost mad at Alfred a little bit.
Right.
Like he's like, you're not my father.
Right. Because Alfred is trying to keep him away from what he wants to be doing.
Exactly.
He's forcing him to be, it's like, he just stopped. He's growing out of that those teenage years, becoming an adult, but he still have those teenage tendencies.
Yep.
That's how this Bruce Wayne Batman is being, portrayed.
Right.
And the relationship with Alfred is not, it's more like a interfering uncle.
Right.
Most definitely not a butler.
No.
Because I don't think Alfred was ever just a butler.
No.
So he's annoyed by him, and it shows, which is also good movie.
Absolutely. And because then we see the progression where Alfred's, almost killed.
Right.
The bomb that was meant for Bruce Wayne. And now Batman, and now we get to see why he's been very cold to Alfred, because he's like, I don't ever want to feel that feeling again of being afraid to lose someone because he lost his parents. So he's literally just like burying all these emotions, which is why we see, even with the early stuff with Selena, where she's like, I'm starting to feel like I'm a fish on a hook here. And then like, you don't even care about me. And then he's just like, looks at her, and it almost makes it seem like he's like, about to I don't know, caress her or something. He's just like checks to make sure the contact's good. Like he don't give a shit.
Right,
man.
You're a tool.
Yep, and he's just and he's fighting it though, but which is very you talking about Hush, where their dynamic was very heavily featured. I mean, Jim Lee will tell you Hush is or Jeff Loeb, it's a love story, between him and Catwoman. But we see how that ended, where he basically brushed her off again because of one little thing she said, and I think we see that Batman here, where
Right.
he likes her, he can't, but he has no problem cutting you off if it screws with his mission.
Right. I mean, but that's typical of pretty much most superhero characters. The only superhero characters that don't have that, I can't bring you into my world because I'm afraid that you're going to get hurt, are the ones that are public.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like eventually the Tony Stark when he told the world that he was Iron Man, things like that. That's when relationships change.
Yep.
But when they have secret identities, all their relationships are most likely tragic.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And then there's a lot of other cool stuff in this movie. The whole deal when Selena goes to Falcone and tries to kill him.
Right.
And we get to see a little bit of the no-kill rule friction that has been there between Batman and Catwoman in the comics.
Right. She
wants to kill the guy who killed. Now, this is another critique. Annika. Why do we have to pick a name that's so obscure like that? Why? But anyways.
Well, because it explains her role, Catwoman's role. That's why she left the apartment. She had to go get the passport, which is why Batman followed her. So
I get that.
It was kind of weaved in. Well, yeah, there's that.
I never heard his name. But can we just pick a more normal name? But anyways,
right? Susan, John.
Yeah, there's some shit. But yeah. So and because of that, when she finds out that this guy killed her or Falcone killed her friend, she had the voicemail recording. She has the cop, basically who she's holding responsible, and she throws him off the roof.
Right.
Batman saves it. That was that was so Catwoman, right?
Right.
Like,
definitely.
Don't throw your life away. She's like, it's all right, I got 9, and kicks him. Like, that was so Catwoman.
Right.
And then, of course, Batman goes, because, the one flaw he's got, But you mentioned the brooding. I like it. Here's anyone who critiques that. Think about, this movie is very practical. This movie is very grounded. If you're 9 years old and your parents are killed in front of you, and you're a billionaire orphan, and you want to seek revenge on the people who cause these types of acts, and you're burying all your emotions, you're probably going to be pretty brooding and depressed.
Right.
It's probably pretty accurate.
Yeah.
Everything's not going to be you ain't going to be, Tony Stark. Going, hey, what's up? Everything's great. Yeah, life ain't a party.
Right.
So that makes sense. And I said this before here, I have faith in Matt Reeves. As far as growing this story from movie to movie because of what he did with the Planet of the Apes.
Okay.
Those movies started, you talk about the one with James Franco where Caesar's essentially a pet.
Right.
And then by the third movie, it's an all-out war film. Mm-hmm. And that trilogy I thought was great.
Yeah.
So I can see, so everyone who's like, he's not the real Bruce Wayne, I'd be willing to bet by the second, definitely by the third movie, we're going to see a full-on playboy Bruce Wayne doing his thing because these characters, Matt Reeves is not going to let this story go on and not have these characters grow.
Right. I'm along for the ride. I mean, like I said, it's just some adjustment for me to see Edward doing this, but cool for him. But I always think that, and I think most people kind of do that.
Yeah.
They have somebody set in their mind who they like, and then it's hard for somebody else to come in and take over their role. Mm-hmm. And so there's a period of adjustment, and that's what I'm going through. I'm going through my period of adjustment.
Yep.
But speaking of Edward, right? So whatever happened to what's this kid? Taylor Lautner from Twilight.
Oh yeah.
That dude just went away, right?
Yeah, he did. Yep.
Wow.
Man, so Edward won in the long run.
Right.
Edward won in the long run.
Wow.
Eventually, they capture Riddler. This whole riddle of bring the rat into the light. Falcone's actually the rat, we find out. Yep. That's a cool little twist. I did not see that coming.
Yeah.
Falcone, of all people, being a rat. That's interesting. And then he's killed. It looks as if Ozzy kills him, because he's about to pull a gun on him because he calls him a little gimp or something. Mm-hmm. And then he's actually sniped from above, and he's in the light, so Batman pulled Falcone into the light. Riddler kills him. They go on this wild goose chase, and they ended up finding Riddler at the diner.
Diner, yeah.
Which I like that scene because it just shows you how sick and twisted he was.
Right.
It kind of reminds me, maybe it's a callback, maybe it's influenced by, but The Dark Knight where the Joker wants to get caught, right? So we get to see Riddler kind of doing his own little Joker impersonation here, getting caught. And then we get to the interrogation scene where, I mean, dude, I thought Riddler knew that he was Bruce Wayne the first time I saw that.
Right.
I mean, that was, and this is when like the directors mess with you, and it's okay,
right?
You know,
but it was all about that funding thing.
Yes,
it was all about his father, and then the son has to pay for the price of the father and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, I agree. I thought he was too. He even thaught he knew.
Oh yeah, he was shook.
Right.
And then it was all of, and this goes to show you how crazy Riddler really was, because he was actually convinced Batman was helping him.
Right.
And I'm like, I go back, I'm like, did he really believe that? And then when he realized, when Batman's like, no, you're just crazy, he starts freaking the hell out. I like that interrogation scene.
Right.
That was pretty cool.
It's like when, Mike, I think you're on my side. You working with me in my cause, and then you say something that makes me realize all this time you have not been with me.
Right.
And so I just go ape shit. So yeah.
Yep. And then from there, we realized that the full plan was more than just killing off all these, high-profile politicians, cops, or whatnot. Riddler had placed bombs throughout Gotham and floods Gotham, which you ever read? There was a storyline in Batman that led to No Man's Land, where Gotham was flooded, but I think it was due to an earthquake or something, cataclysm or some shit like that. I've read some in No Man's Land, but that's what this is inspired by.
Yep.
Where that exact thing happens, and then we get to see. I mean, Gotham's flooding. I liked how their repurpose of Madison Square Garden, Gotham Square Garden.
Right.
That was cool little. And that's where the end of this movie pretty much happened, where there's people inside Gotham Square Garden. It's now flooding because they're having this. Political. I think maybe it was the actual election or something, or. Anyway, Bella Real, nice little side. I thought she was a cool character, little sideline character, played well by the actress. I forget her name. But everyone ends up at this Madison Square Garden type of venue, and the Riddler. I like the use of social media in this too,
right?
Where the Riddler has a following, and he's getting them almost kind of mirrors the whole January 6th deal, right? So we see that Batman shows up, and this is probably one of my favorite scenes when he's up in the rafters attacking these guys. I know you only play Ratchet and Clank, but there's a series of Arkham games, and I believe that the combat and the stealth attack in this scene was influenced by some of the combat in those games. It was very similar. Batman's in the rafters a lot. He attacks. And then actually backing up a bit, one of the really cool scenes when he came out of the Falcone's elevator, and it's all pitch black, and it's only being lit up by the gunshots. Right. And now he's got the armored suit, so we see him flash in and flash out. I thought that was really cool.
Right. I like the fact that even in the beginning, when people were shooting at him, he took a couple of direct hits from bullets, but the armor really isn't designed to be a all-inclusive, bulletproof, knife-proof, costume. There's a lot of deflection in there.
Yes,
and a lot of that stuff is he's protected by more deflection than just brute force. And I like the fact that he's trained himself enough to be able to do the deflection. So it's not just the tech that saved him. It's also his level of skill, even in year 2.
Absolutely. And you see that the suit's pretty banged up. Like it's not in pristine condition.
Right.
Which it should be.
You don't have a car chase, and all the cars are on this street, they're all banged up, and then you take a left and they're brand new again.
Yeah, exactly.
But that flood got me thinking about something, since Batman eventually makes everybody go through him to operate in his city, right? Yeah. So that bombing thing, if this was year 10 of Batman, I would be disappointed that he would even allow somebody to plant bombs to be able to flood the city. Yeah. But I'm guessing that, the Batman character, seeing this as a vulnerability for his city, he's probably going to shore that shit up.
Absolutely. Yeah, because he's not really taking that stance in this where, maybe a little bit in my city. Yeah. I think he's starting to take ownership of it, right? So yeah, we see the flood, and then this is where they're at the Madison Square Garden type of venue. They're fighting in the rafters, and Batman he gets kind of taken out a little bit. He gets shot. The shotgun dazes him. To your point, he's not bulletproof, so he gets hit with this shotgun. He's kind of dazed. And then Selina's there, and we see one of Riddler's goons is basically, going off on Selina.
Right.
And then Batman loses it. He injects himself with some type of, and we've not confirmed what this is. I mentioned to you there's a comic run called Batman Venom, where Batman fails to save a kid, I believe, and he wasn't strong enough to save. It was, I think a car was in the water, is drowning, some shit like that. I could be wrong. Again, we are not experts on all the comics. I could be completely wrong. But anyways, because of that, he ends up, long story short, he ends up taking some drugs called Venom, and it's like a green pill, which is the same shit Bane takes to make him stronger. He gets addicted to it. So this little thing he shot in his leg, and I like how the suit had the spot right there for it, just in case, bro.
just in case.
But it may be Venom, maybe adrenaline, whatever it was. But, dude, he takes that, and he about caves my man's face in.
Right.
And this is where we see the change. Because up until this point, he's still just vengeance. He's still, he's trying to save people, but he's also trying to inflict some pain. And because this guy was choking Catwoman, I think.
Right.
And then when he's done pounding his face in, the guy's like crazy, and he goes, I'm vengeance. He's all beat up on it. And I think he kind of realized, oh, shit, it's probably a little too much.
Right.
And then, towards the end, so this facility is flooding, and there's this big, what's the shit called above the big screen, anyways. The big box screen above the arena is about to fall into the water, which would essentially kill everyone in there because it would be freaking electrocuted. And this is where the first time I think we see Batman attempt to make a sacrifice. I'm going to jump and save these people regardless of what happens.
Right.
Obviously, he survives, but I think that's where we see that transition into the hero, which I thought was cool. To Matt Reeves' credit, they crafted a great film, great writing, a lot of attention to detail went into this. They also were allowed to take their time.
Right.
We talk about Marvel rushing shit out, and even DC. This Blue Beat, all these things, or when they rushed the DCU and we got Justice League in the second movie, they took their time with this movie. Just like the next one isn't coming out, I think it's 2025. Wow. Which is 3 years from the time they started this.
Makes sense.
Yeah, it does if you want to make a good movie.
Right. Like I said, I'll sit on a decade and watch a character mature if it makes sense.
Yeah, but you don't need it every 2 weeks, right?
No. Good with that. But even like the Wolverine, he matured over like a decade. Captain America, he matured over like a decade or something like that. So all that stuff is good. But when you were listing the movies earlier, like the movies that were part of the DCU and the MCU, and I'm like, damn, dude, we watched a lot of movies, dude. And that's just. Those are the live action things.
Yeah.
So it's been a lot.
It has. Oh, it's been a run, dude. It has. Yeah. I'm excited for. So I guess coming out of this movie, the ending I thought was really done well.
Right.
It's like no one really won. Batman saved these people, and he mentions in his end narration that basically he realizes he needs to be essentially a beacon of hope for the people in Gotham. Because Gotham's a pretty shitty place. Right. And he needs to be that kind of light, versus just being the vengeance. So we see that. Him and Selina kind of part ways. Right. She mentioned she's going to Bloodhaven, which is a location we see a lot in the comics. Batman's kind of on, he's no longer on the GCPD's shit list, right? Because he's kind of got rid of a lot of the corrupt cops there. And we saw when Falcone came out of the Iceberg Lounge, the cops that were not on his side, because that was the other thing. Do we take down Falcone? Well, he's got his hand, he's got all the cops in his pocket. Right. But there was a handful that weren't. So I thought it did a very great job of wrapping up this story as much as it could, but also setting up the future. Right. I like the ending.
Yeah. It was cool. It was, I think, how he felt for Selina was a pivotal moment in his development. Right. In that he couldn't just be vengeance. Yes. Because, you possibly realize that, I still do have a heart underneath all this whatever I'm wearing. And there has to be something else to me other than just, beating people to a pulp.
Yeah.
So I agree. I like the ending.
Yeah.
But I definitely think he's going to be looking around Gotham and it's like, dude, we can't have another flood.
Yeah.
Coming up in this joint.
Yep.
Not in my city.
Yes. So coming out of this, the Batman 2 is the next movie coming out of this. As of right now, that's supposed to hit theaters in 25.
Okay.
With the strike, would have been pushed back maybe, but I think they've had enough time where we hopefully don't see anything there. There's also the Penguin series, which is
with Colin Farrell.
Yep, Colin Farrell.
Nice.
It's supposed to take place pretty much the minute this movie ends. He said that the first scene in that he read in the script was basically Falcone's office flooding, and now Oz is pretty much in control. So we get this. What I've read about this is it's pretty much a show where the Penguin, we're going to see his rise to power pretty much.
There was actually an animated Batman, Young Robin, they were on like a expedition in the Arctic looking for something. And they found a bunch of dead bodies all over the place. It was just kind of weird. And the Penguin was like standing up on some iceberg naked.
Okay.
So it was kind of the Penguin's, how his origin.
Yeah.
Kind of deal. So that was pretty interesting. It'll be interesting to see if the live action is kind of similar to that.
Yeah. And now as far as filming, they started filming March 1st. Of this past year, and then they were shut down due to the strike. So at that point, the show was supposed to debut in 2024 on Max. So 8 episodes is what they're saying. Which I'd be ready for this. I'm kind of like I've had enough of the Marvel shows for a little bit, and I know Loki's 2's coming out, so maybe that can kind of bring me. But the past few, I'm like, with the Secret Invasion, it's got a bad taste in my mouth still.
Right.
I'd like to see DC take a shot at the shows.
Yeah. I forgot what I was going to say.
All right.
So
here I got something. It says that so far the footage, I guess they did some test footage. It had the look of a dark Sopranos with Farrell playing a full-on crime boss.
Yep, I agree with that.
Yeah, so that would be. It says Soprano energy, and noted its continued use of the dark orange wash aesthetics. Like I love the look of the Batman movie, the dark orange, red, and stuff throughout. Right. Very like I love. We talk about this with the Batman comics. Like you pull up, Gotham. In any damn story, it's raining, there's lightning, or the sky's red.
Right,
I love that. So there you have it. I say 9.2. You say 6.57.
6.57. I'll
talk you up to a 7.
You talk me up to a solid 7.
All right.
It was again, I've only seen it twice. You've seen it 8 or 9 times.
Yeah, something like that.
So you see more of the nuancing things that's going on in the show. But I do realize I need to give Pattinson a break, let him evolve because I didn't like Jackman as Wolverine when he first came
X-Men
out either.
1, yeah, he was a skinny guy.
So good for you. It's good, Pattinson, that you cleave yourself away from Lauritsen or whatever his name was, Twilight Boy,
right?
The other Twilight Boy, because he just went away, dude.
Yeah, he did.
He was like Emilio Estevez. He's just gone, dude.
On a milk carton somewhere. The other thing about the Penguin series, Sophia Falcone is going to be in there. Carmine Falcone's daughter, who is in a lot of the comics, who you'll see in Long Halloween too. Cool. So, there you have it. That is our deep dive, our only comics patented deep dive into the Batman. And to Adrian's point, if they don't release good movies, then we'll just do deep dives into old movies.
Hey, there you go.
We'll do a Dark Knight deep dive at some point.
There you go.
You probably won't even need to rewatch it then.
Oh, I need to rewatch it, dude. I've consumed just so much between paper, animation.
Yeah.
We haven't even gotten into some of the other stuff that's on.
I know.
Mine,
absolutely.
anime cosplay. There's still a lot of content out
Oh,
there.
yeah.
So hopefully we'll be around for a bit.
Yes.
And doing deep dives into other types of things other
Yeah.
than movies and anime.
Absolutely. And hopefully you guys will be right here with us. So if you like what you watched, if you like what you heard today, hit the subscribe button so you can stay in tune with when we're dropping new videos. We drop Only Comics every Monday evening, 5:30 Eastern Standard Time, and then a bunch of other content throughout the week. So drop some note in the comments. Let us know. Do you agree with us? It was Batman a 9.2 for you? Was it a 7, or was it lower, higher? What do you think?